A startup aims to help you find what to watch. Welcome back to Techstination. I'm Fred Fishkin. With us from Screen Genius is founder and CEO Daniel Sieberg. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Fred. It's tremendous to be with you.
Great to see you once again. So, you have identified a problem in need of a solution. Tell us about
Well, I feel like I started all this as a frustrated dad on a Friday night, just trying to figure out what to watch and trying to discover and make decisions about content and video that I had no idea where it was, where to look, how to go about this. And so that was the origin story for this. And we really see that what we're building with Screen Genius is where streaming starts. So once upon a time, people thought of TV Guide as a place to make some decisions. Maybe it was about looking through the newspaper, going online. These days, people do a lot of searching around. So we wanted to come up with something that feels personalized, agnostic, and holistic in terms of the content that we offer people, and in a way that feels dynamic. And this is where we see that generative AI can really provide that kind of value to consumers. And we have a B2B way of thinking about how we want to go about this, and a B2C way directly to consumers as well.
So, I guess typically today, if our audience members are a lot like me, come Friday or on a Saturday or Sunday, you do a search, what to stream this weekend, and you get different kinds of tips of what's out there. Tell us how this solution works and step us through.
Sure. Well, there are more than 2 million video on demand titles available across movies and TV shows these days. There are now dozens, if not hundreds, of streaming services from which to find all of this content. And that's just movies and TV shows. We're really thinking about all streaming content, which now includes sports, it includes news. And so we want to provide a way that aggregates all of this in one place. And whether it's a Friday night or a Saturday morning, we want to understand a little bit of the context of what's going on in your life. This is part of the value that generative AI and AI can provide, that we start to get to know you a little bit. We want to understand what sort of mood that you're in. And from a technical perspective, there's a lot more metadata associated with each individual piece of content that can help to map better to whatever it is that you want to watch, which no streaming service today can possibly know. What does Fred want to watch? What does Daniel want to watch? Who else is in the room? All of that is what we want to facilitate as this kind of intermediary, whether you find Screen Genius through our app, our branded app, or you find us in another place. We want to do this in a way that allows you to do it easily and simply through voice, through swiping gestures, and through this way that the recommendations come to you without scrolling. And this is, I think, what, so many of us have come to become frustrated with in this entire experience, is that scrolling is the death of decision making. And the data shows that all of us spend several minutes or more of frustration, whether you're by yourself or a significant other or with your children, just trying to figure out where anything is, because now there is just so much content out there. So how can we turn Gen AI into the new UI, generative AI into the new user interface that's personalized and customized and simple every time you sit down to watch something?
So, this is going to be an app people will use. Describe for us how this gets used by consumers.
Yes. So what we have built to date is our recommendation engine, our generative AI recommendation engine. And we are now beginning to integrate that into third parties. That could be through an ad tech experience, which is the first partner that we're working with, called Swipe Finder. They're going to be offering people trailers of movies and TV shows in this kind of Tinder-like experience. And we're going to provide the generative AI recommendations that power that as people provide their intentions and swipe in 4 different directions. For example, you could swipe to the right and say, I want to watch this. You could swipe left and say, I never want to watch this. And that embeddable ad will appear in different media properties. We're going to be testing this with them in Q4 to understand how to measure the success of this. And then we also want to offer that recommendation engine into streaming services to provide this generative AI experience, save them the hassle of trying to spin this up internally in lots of different companies. We also see That's the first way we're doing this. The second way is with a white label. So if you can sort of think of Screen Genius without all the branding, but with this way to use your voice to tell us what you're in the mood for, or swiping gestures, and integrating that into, let's say, a publisher's app. You know, when I was a kid growing up, newspapers were the place that you went to figure out what was on. So think of us as like a TV insert into publishers' apps or anywhere else that you would go to make decisions, powered by Screen Genius. And then the third place that we're exploring is OEM integration. So think of your smartphone becoming the new remote control with your smart TV. And what we see is a day when set-top boxes and all these intermediary devices are not necessary, and that the real estate of your smartphone, that screen, can show you what's on right now based on what you're interested in, little squares and tiles that are maybe representative of sports. You could tell us you're in the mood for local news, whatever it is that you want to watch, and that your smartphone has a direct relationship to a smart television, and that you just start to tell us, use voice, someday maybe avatars or whatever it is that people want to build in. But we want to talk to manufacturers of televisions. That's on the B2B side. And then we are, as I mentioned, we're releasing our MVP, or our early minimum viable product, or as our product designer likes to call it, our minimum lovable product. So something that adds value to consumers' lives and helps to save time and just makes the whole experience more enjoyable and simple. We're going to release that sometime in September or maybe early October, and eventually turn that into an app that builds our brand in the marketplace, iOS and Android eventually. And in parallel, we'll learn from consumers directly how this is working for them. What are the ways that we can improve upon this from a functional perspective, and just, making it better, and then take those learnings and apply them to the B2B marketplace that we are now starting to build out. We're leading with B2B and then heading into B2C.
How do you deal with the concerns that many people express about privacy and the technology knowing way too much about us, et cetera?
Yes. Well, it's a conversation we've had recently, because in the MVP that we're building, we want to allow people to hold down a button on the screen to tell us what they're in the mood for. And, as these days, as people have started to interact with more and more AI chatbot experiences, right? Whether it's Gemini or Claude or OpenAI or any of the ways that you're providing your interests, whatever it is, you want to have this kind of two-way experience with something. You're providing text, maybe if you're doing it through your computer or your phone, you're typing it in. Maybe you're providing voice. And certainly whatever it is that you're sharing and disclosing becomes something that's training these models. It's starting to learn a little bit about you. Is there value there over time? Is it, adds more to your life, whether it's efficiency or productivity or whatever it is. And for us, just adding a simple button to tell you that now we're listening to you, and that by literally pushing on the screen on your smartphone and holding down this button, it's like a walkie-talkie. We're opening up the mic, so to speak, and we want to hear from you. So for example, I've used our prototype a number of times with my daughters, who are both under 14. So I will hold down the mic. In this case, we're using Apple's native mic, but I'll hold it down and I'll say, it's Friday night movie night with my daughters, who are both under 14. We're in the mood for something good for the family, action adventure, funny, something new, and appropriate, and less than 2 hours, and not animated, right? So I feed all this text essentially, because of course what AI and generative AI is doing is taking text or written anything and turning it into something else. And then we take all of that text, all of that speech, and turn that back into recommendations. So they come back as tiles on your screen that you can then scroll to a limited way or swipe through. And eventually the vision for us is that you would tap on your smartphone again and then cast directly to your TV. And so it becomes this relationship between your smartphone and your smart TV. But we want to ensure that people know that when you're holding that button down, we are listening to you. We want to understand who's in the room. Tell us, just give us all sorts of parameters and to understand what you're in the mood for. And a lot of times, just anecdotally, when you sit down, the data shows us that 75% of people don't even know what they're in the mood for. Do you want to watch something scary? What about the person next to you? Gosh, you had a busy day. People are just kind of settling in at that point. But we want to be clear about when we're accepting your information and your mood and whenever it is. And then when you release your thumb, for example, we would sort of close the mic, and then you can decide amongst yourselves, what's valuable. and give us feedback over time. But we've got to prove our utility in people's lives to help to make these decisions better. Because as I say on a regular basis, what you listen to is important, what you read is important, and what you watch can change your life. And this is where we see ourselves in people's living rooms and bedrooms as they make these decisions, or wherever they
And
work, everything. So
and you would know what services I subscribe to.
that's a great question, Fred. So we've talked about how we could show you what you currently subscribe to. If you wanted to tell us, you could say, hey, you have a Netflix and a Hulu and a Disney and a Max subscription, for example. Then we will just show you recommendations based on those streaming subscriptions. We've also talked about having a toggle or a way to introduce you to content that maybe you hadn't thought of before. Maybe you want to do a trial with a streaming service you haven't discovered before, one that maybe even haven't heard of before, like a smaller one like Tubi or something like that. And how can we set up a revenue share with those streaming services as we introduce maybe a new customer that becomes a way to do a rev share? And for the consumer, we're allowing you to see agnostically and holistically, what are you in the mood for? We don't represent any individual streaming service. We represent the consumers at the center. And this is where we see generative AI as allowing this to happen. This is what's missing, in our opinion, why there's so much pain in this for people, millions of people all over the world, us, me, certainly me included, is that there is no singular place to start. And not knowing where any content is and what are you in the mood for, what's out there, what's new, this changes on a daily basis. And so this is why Screen Genius, where streaming starts, we kind of see, then even in our logo, you'll see that we're the circle and then the kind of cone shape. The circle represents the customer and the consumer. And the cone shape is all the streaming video, everything you can imagine that's coming at people when they sit down to make that decision. And we're kind of the intermediary that's representing that that consumer as they're feeling overwhelmed.
Right now, I assume that, and some maybe do a better job than others, streaming services already know what I like, what I don't like, that kind of thing. They know what I'm watching.
They certainly know what you're watching, and they know a lot of things. They know when you paused a show. They know, did you come back to them on a certain point? But they only know that based on when you went into their walled garden, right? So let's say you used Apple on a Monday, and then on Wednesday you used Netflix, and Thursday you used Disney, and then you go back to Apple. All Apple knows is that the last time you were there, you watched this particular show, and maybe you want to pick up with that show or something related to that. But what they don't know is, and that's a recency engine. That's just whatever you did the last time you were there. But they have no idea what's happened in your life since then. You know, a lot of the streaming services make recommendations based on the last time you were there, but don't account for even the time of day. For example, on a Friday night, you know, if you're by yourself or with your significant other, I don't know, maybe you watch a documentary about serial killers or something because you're just in the mood for something a little bit dark and spooky. But then Saturday morning, probably not what you're in the mood for, but those recommendations are still sitting there because that's the last thing that you did. So contextual recommendations that are starting to understand you over time without worrying about which streaming service you were in last is where we see ourselves fitting in. And the data shows that the average home in the United States has well more than 3 streaming service subscriptions per month. And these days is heading closer to 5 or more. And some of them are bundled and packages here and there, and they include sports or this or that. So just trying to make sense of that is part of where we see ourselves. And the value to streaming services, because remember, this is a multi-sided marketplace for us. There are the content creators. They want to get this in front of people who actually want to watch this and find those people. There are the streaming services as the distribution platforms. And then there's the consumer who's just sitting there going, I don't know what's out there, like what's available to me right now. And for the streaming services, the challenge, particularly by comparison to when cable was the way that people got their content, is that when you went to cancel a cable subscription or a package or whatever it was tedious and time consuming, and it was attached to your phone and your internet and lots of other things. So you just picked a whole bunch of things and you left it. Individual streaming services are so easy to cancel today. You could cancel or pause Disney or Netflix or Hulu or whatever in 5 seconds if you don't feel like it's providing for you and your family what you want. So we want to be able to help the streaming services as a map, as a navigation system, as ways that they can integrate our technology or certainly work with us from a data perspective, because our data that we have, and that's going to become part of our defensible moat as we're aggregating this data and understanding what data is most important to help to understand what people are in the mood for. We're not trying to build an LLM. We're licensing an LLM in order to build out our data set. I would suggest that we're building an SLM, a small language model. And that small language model is based on the kind of linguistics and semantics that apply to what to watch. And this is where we see ourselves as being beneficial to all parties involved here and solving the pain that's occurring as people are either canceling a streaming subscription or going somewhere else and just, getting confused along the way.
And the revenue for your company would come from those services as you steer people towards
That's
them?
right. So we have three B2B revenue models. The first is licensing our API or our recommendation engine, and that's the first one that we've embarked on and announced just this week with Swipe Finder, which is the Swedish ad tech company. And we have a lot of different ways that we want to license this recommendation engine. Could be to smaller streaming services, could be to some lifestyle brands, but that's just kind of our back end technology. That's licensing that per month or per quarter. And we're in the midst of figuring out some of the details around that, but that's thing one. Thing two is a white label version. So something that can be integrated into an existing publisher, like an insert. Take any newspaper in the world that has an app, imagine a section in there that's called What's On, and it's powered by Screen Genius, but it has all the branding of that particular newspaper's app or whatever it is. It's just a place where people can go and they start to see the functionality as associated with that newspaper's app. Thus, maybe they retain more subscribers themselves. They can start to sell some ad revenue directly into that section, and it starts to become something meaningful for them. We can see how to scale this in lots of different places. And then the third is around OEM integrations. Pick a big television manufacturer, but if you can imagine that we're integrated into that smart TV onboarding experience and you're pairing your smart TV with Screen Genius on your smartphone, those are our three B2B ways to generate revenue. We see that happening sometime next year. And then on the consumer side, a subscription app will offer a freemium. In a similar way, maybe it's something we introduce some targeted ads to people depending on the context of whatever you're searching for. We give people a couple of weeks to try us out and see if there's enough value in your life. But we don't want to turn this into something that's a big pain in to pay for every month. We're talking $2 a month or $20 a year to just be able to have a guide that's providing this value to you. And this is what we need to prove out as we release our MVP towards the end of this month and into next month.
Terrific. So where can people go for more info?
So we have everything hosted right now at Screen Genius, and that means going to screengenie.us. So we're having a little fun with our domain name and our branding. We like that dot in there. To us, that represents the customer. So Screen Genius, if you just type that into your browser, or because we're a Delaware C Corp, we're also the streaming guide. Either one will take you to the same place. And you can sign up for our mailing list. We've already started telling people sort of, what we're up to and building our brand. And we can't wait to hear from consumers as they steer us in the right direction. We're a consumer first, customer centric company from the beginning.
Oh, congratulations on the innovations. Lots to come. Daniel Sieberg, thanks for spending time with us.
That's my pleasure, Fred. Thank you for having me.